Okay, so you're an international student in Canada. You already know that working while you study is a total game changer, right? But here's the thing, the rules can be super tricky, and messing them up, that's just not an option. So let's break down exactly what you need to know to stay on the right side of the law.
Yeah, this quote, it really hits home, doesn't it? Because let's be real, for so many of you, the Canadian dream isn't just about getting that diploma. It's about getting your foot in the door, gaining that invaluable Canadian work experience, and yeah, earning some money to support yourself along the way. It's all part of the package.
But, and this is a huge but, you have got to understand that these rules are strict for a reason. The consequences for breaking them are, well, they're severe. This is one area where you just can't afford to make a mistake. It's that serious.
And this is exactly it. This is where your big dream meets the day-to-day reality. Look, to make those goals happen, you have to get a handle on Canada's immigration regulations. Knowing these rules isn't just some nice to have. No, it's absolutely the key to protecting your entire future in this country.
So where does it all begin? With the most important document you have, your study permit. Think of it as your golden ticket. In most cases, this one piece of paper is your permission to work. You don't even need a separate application. But, and listen up, because this is a big but, that's only if you meet some very, very specific conditions.
All right, so if you want to work off campus, you have to tick every single one of these boxes, no exceptions. First, you've got to be a full-time student at what's called a Designated Learning Institution, or DLI. That's just a school the government has approved. Second, your study permit has to literally say you're allowed to work. Your program also needs to be a real degree, diploma, or certificate program. And, this is a big one, your classes must have actually started.
Now, on the flip side, it's just as crucial to know if you're not allowed to work. So if you're here for an English or French language program, or you're just taking some prerequisite courses to get into another program, you generally can't work. Same thing goes for most part-time students. And I can't stress this enough. Working when you're not supposed to has serious life-altering consequences.
Okay, so it's not just about if you can work, it's also about where. And this is a huge distinction because the rules are completely different for on-campus versus off-campus jobs. Seriously, you got to think of them as two separate worlds, each with its own rulebook.
So let's break down that critical difference. On-campus work is pretty straightforward. It's for an employer physically at your school. We're talking the university itself, a professor, maybe the campus bookstore, and the best part? No limit on your hours. You can work as much as you can handle. But the second you take a job off campus, the game completely changes. Your hours get strictly limited, and your permit has to specifically say you can do it. All right, let's talk more about that off-campus work. Because there is one number, one single number that you absolutely have to burn into your memory. This is the new rule, and believe me, immigration officers are watching it like a hawk.
And that number is 24. That's it. That's the absolute maximum number of hours you can work off campus per week while your classes are in session. Not 25, not even 24 and a half. 24, period. End of story.
Now, is there any exception to this 24-hour rule? Yes, but only one. It's during what's called a scheduled academic break. Like the big winter holiday, the summer break, or maybe reading week. During those official school breaks, you can work full-time, but here's the catch. You had to be a full-time student before the break started, and you have to be going right back to full-time studies when it's over.
All right, now let's get into the really serious stuff. We need to talk about the common mistakes, the traps that can completely jeopardize your future in Canada. These are the three big ones that students fall into way too often.
Trap number 1, working before your program actually starts. This one is huge. I get it, you might arrive in Canada a few weeks early to get settled, but you are not allowed to work a single hour until the very first official day of your classes. If you start early, that's considered illegal work, plain and simple.
Okay, trap number 2, the part-time trap. Here's how it works. If you drop from being a full-time student to a part-time student for any reason at all, you immediately lose your right to work off campus. The only exception is if it's your very last semester and you only need 1 or 2 courses to graduate. Otherwise, the moment you go part-time, you have to stop working. Immediately.
And this brings us to a point that is absolutely non-negotiable. The government does not average out your hours. You can't work 30 hours one week and then 18 the next and think it all balances out. Nope. They look at each week one by one. If you work even 1 hour over that 24-hour limit in a single week, that's it. You've broken the rules. There are no second chances on this.
So, what happens if you break these rules?
Well, the consequences are about as serious as they get. We're talking about an exclusion order. That's a fancy word for deportation. You could get a ban from entering Canada for a year, and you can pretty much guarantee that any future applications you make for a work permit or for permanent residence will be refused. It can literally end your Canadian dream permanently.
Okay, that was a lot of heavy stuff, I know. So the big question is, how do you make sure you get this right from day one? How do you protect yourself and your status? Well, it really just comes down to being prepared and paying attention.
Here's your 4-step checklist to set yourself up for success. Step 1, actually read your study permit. Look for the words that say you're allowed to work. Step 2, go get your social insurance number, or SIN. You can't get paid legally without it. Step 3, easy one, open a Canadian bank account. And step 4, and this is on you, track every single hour you work. Remember, staying under that 24-hour limit is your responsibility, not your employer's.
So in the end, it all comes down to this. You have the dream, and you have the rules, and it's up to you to protect both. The opportunity here in Canada is incredible, but it demands that you pay attention to the details. The best way to protect your dream is to respect the rules that make it all possible.